Hello, lovely listeners. I'm Julia, who will help you relax and fall asleep tonight. What time is it for you right now? And do you prefer stories or calming music to fall asleep? Let me know in the comments. Deep beneath the shimmering waves, in a realm of pearlescent light and liquid magic, lay an enchanting kingdom where the wonders of the sea unfolded in endless displays of color and mystery. In this underwater paradise, the palace was built from living coral and glistening crystals that caught every ray of light like scattered fragments of a long-forgotten dream. At the helm of this realm reigned the wise and benevolent Sea King, whose deep, rumbling voice echoed like the tide, and whose gentle gaze held a lifetime of secrets. Within these grand halls lived a young mermaid, whose heart burned with both the curiosity of youth and a yearning for that which lay beyond the watery veil. Though she was born into a world of vibrant song, playful currents, and luminous creatures, the little mermaid felt an allure that stretched far above the surface, a fascination with the realm of air and sunlight that none of her kin could truly understand. In the palace gardens, where the water danced around delicate blossoms of sea anemones and starfish arranged themselves like scattered jewels upon a velvet carpet, the little mermaid spent countless hours wandering in quiet contemplation. Along hidden paths between swaying fronds of kelp, she discovered a small alcove reserved for quiet reflection. There, nestled between clusters of gentle coral, stood a finely carved statue of a human boy. The statue, fashioned from smooth, bleached ivory and worn at its edges by the caresses of ocean currents, had been retrieved long ago from the wreckage of a forgotten ship. To the little mermaid, it was a tangible link to the mysterious world above, a silent friend whose expression held dreams and stories of a life she had never known. She would gently trace the contours of his face with trembling fins, imagining the warmth of the sun on skin and the tender feel of human touch, and in those moments, her heart whispered secrets of longing and forbidden wonder. The kingdom followed ancient customs steeped in timeless tradition. In this world, each mermaid, upon reaching the age of 15, was granted a singular and cherished privilege. When a mermaid's body and spirit had grown strong enough to withstand the vast differences between the deep and the surface, she would be allowed to rise up, if only for a fleeting moment, to catch a glimpse of the world above the waves. It was a journey as perilous as it was wondrous, a delicate ceremony of passage into a realm filled with both marvel and sorrow. The little mermaid's 5 older sisters had each embarked on this voyage in their turn, and each had returned with stories colored by the dazzling light of the sun and the bitter aftertaste of regret. Their accounts, filled with descriptions of radiant skies, bustling harbors, and the ephemeral laughter of humans, often left the little mermaid entranced, even as the older sisters themselves grew weary and disenchanted. With each passing year, the elder mermaids came to view the surface as a land of fleeting pleasures, its joys as transient as the foam atop, the rolling waves, and so they retreated into the secure embrace of their aqueous home, leaving the little mermaid to nurse her dreams in growing solitude. At long last the day arrived when her own skin, now smoother and kissed by the gentle glow of adolescence, seemed to hum with anticipation. In the moments before her scheduled journey to the surface, the little mermaid found herself wandering the palace corridors with a mind abuzz with expectations. I wonder what it feels like to breathe the air, to feel the warmth of the sun dancing upon my scales, she murmured to herself as she lingered near her cherished statue. In those silent hours, each ripple of the water seemed to amplify her inner longing, a deep, unspoken desire that reached far beyond the boundaries of her familiar underwater world. When the appointed time came, her heart pounded like the distant drumbeat of an approaching tide, and she could hardly sleep as she lay among her silken seaweed beds, imagining for 1,000 moments the mysterious world awaiting her above. When at last the lights of dawn, diffused through layers of turquoise water, signaled the beginning of her first forbidden journey, the little mermaid propelled herself upward with graceful, powerful strokes. With every flick of her shimmering tail, she ascended toward a realm of dazzling brightness and warming heat, until at last the surface burst forth before her like a stage set for miracles. Lifting her eyes to the heavens, she beheld a panorama of endless blues and radiant golds, of wide-open skies and sunlit ripples dancing on the crest of gentle waves. Far above, a magnificent ship glided across the water, a vessel resplendent with banners and lights, its decks alive with celebration. The ship was hosting a birthday festivity in honor of a young prince, and as the little mermaid watched from a careful distance, her heart fluttered with both delight and an inexplicable sorrow. From her hidden perch, she observed the laughter of the passengers and the graceful movements of those who danced upon the deck, all framed by the brilliant palette of a new day. The little mermaid's eyes were drawn, as if by some mystical force, to a figure on the ship whose presence eclipsed all others. There, at the center of the celebration, stood a young prince adorned in finery, his dark hair and earnest eyes a striking counterpoint to the opulent decorations around him. For a long, breathless moment, the world seemed to narrow until nothing existed but his gentle face and the sadness that lay just beneath the surface of his smile. "How curious and achingly beautiful is this man," thought the little mermaid, the seed of a profound and dangerous love taking root in her heart at that very instant. Unbeknownst to him, in that fleeting moment of shared fate, she felt something stir within her, a promise of a future that might one day bridge two irreconcilable worlds. But as the celebration unfolded in blissful merriment above, the winds of destiny were gathering force below. Without warning, black storm clouds roiled across the horizon, and the once calm sea surged into a frenzy of angry currents and crashing waves. The deck of the ship, moments ago a stage of vibrant joy, was now a battleground against nature's might. As gusts of wind scattered banners and sent terrified shudders through the revelers, the little mermaid watched in horror as the vessel was engulfed by the storm. The mighty ship, unable to withstand the fury of the tempest, began to list precariously, its light dimming amid the chaos. In a heartbeat, when the turmoil reached its dreadful peak, the little mermaid plunged into the chaos of the churning sea. Waves slammed around her, and the darkness of the deep threatened to conceal her in eternal oblivion. Yet in the midst of the storm's overwhelming rage, she spied, amid a flurry of debris and desperate cries, the figure of the young prince flung into the turbulent water. With determination born of desperate love and pure instinct, she darted towards him. Though every fiber of her being trembled in fear of the unknown and of the endless power of the tempest, she refused to allow his tender, fragile life to slip away beneath the merciless waves. Battling against the thrashing currents, the little mermaid reached the prince as he sank deeper into the darkness. With trembling arms, she wrapped him in a protective embrace and hefted him upward, her small form straining against the raging seawater. For what felt like an eternity, she fought against the relentless undertow until finally a distant glimmer of light at the shore beckoned her onward. Exhausted and barely conscious herself, she pressed onward until she reached a hidden stretch of sand near a secluded temple. There, on the gentle curve of the beach, she laid the unconscious prince upon a bed of soft, cooling sand, cradling him as if he were the center of her whole universe. The tempest, as if acquiescing to fate's quiet decree, gradually subsided. In the calm that followed the storm's devastation, the little mermaid lingered by the prince's side, her heart heavy with love and helpless hope. With each subtle ripple of the tide and each silent beat of her heart, she longed to reveal herself, to step forward and announce that it was she who had risked everything to save him. Yet, even as she hovered by his side, she knew in her core that his fragile reality might never allow him to glimpse the truth of his salvation. Days later, as warm rays of sun illuminated the temple and the gentle hum of human life began anew, word of the miraculous rescue spread among the keepers of that sacred place. A young woman from the temple, whose kindness radiated like the morning light, was tasked with caring for the prince. Along with a retinue of devoted ladies-in-waiting, she attended to him tirelessly, nursing him back to consciousness with whispered prayers and healing salves. The little mermaid watched from the shadows, her heart dancing between hope and despair, each beat echoing the unknown fate that awaited her secret. In those silent hours, the mirth of human voices and the cadence of their laughter carried a bittersweet melody, a reminder of what might have been if fate had allowed their souls to finally intertwine. One night, beneath the shimmering glow of underwater fireflies and the silent watch of ancient sea sages, the little mermaid sought counsel from her beloved grandmother. With eyes filled with quiet wisdom, the old matriarch spoke in soft, measured tones. "Do you wonder, dear child, if a human can live forever?" she asked gently, her voice echoing like a lullaby amidst the soft currents. "Humans, though blessed with hearts that yearn and souls that endure, live but for a few centuries, a fleeting moment compared to our endless tides. Yet within each human spirit burns an eternal flame, destined to find its place in the heavens. We merfolk, for all our grace and longevity, are fated to dissolve into sea foam when our time comes. Our souls, as transient as the morning mist over the waves, vanish into nothingness." The little mermaid listened, her mind awash with both wonder and sorrow. The notion of an eternal soul, a spark of life that transcended mortal confines, ignited a desperate desire within her, the longing to share that flame with the prince, to possess a soul that could soar beyond the limits of this watery domain, became a consuming fire in her heart. With every whispered memory of his gentle smile and every wistful tear shed in the quiet of midnight, she felt the weight of an impossible yearning pressing down upon her. Torn between the innate security of her ocean home and the dizzying allure of the unknown, the little mermaid sought a path that might bridge the chasm between two disparate worlds. It was then that, driven by the intensity of her love and the promise of an eternal soul, she resolved to seek the aid of a notorious figure known only as the Sea Witch, in a desolate part of the ocean, where strange twisting forests of polyps swayed amid murky mud and treacherous whirlpools. The Sea Witch held court over her own dark domain. Her reputation was one of both dread and fascination. Many whispered that she possessed the power to bestow gifts no other being could offer, but always at a terrible cost. Gathering every ounce of courage, the little mermaid journeyed through perilous waters to the lair of the Sea Witch. The path was strewn with dangers, unseen tentacles that brushed past her with malicious intent, dark, silent shapes lurking in the gloom, and currents that threatened to carry her off into oblivion. At long last, she arrived before the sea witch's dwelling, a gnarled reef twisted into a labyrinth of shadow and eerie light. The witch herself emerged from behind a cascade of tangled seaweed, her eyes gleaming with a cunning intensity as she regarded the young mermaid. "So," the witch said in a rasping tone that echoed like distant thunder, "you wish to trade what is most precious for the life you so desperately desire?" The little mermaid's voice trembled as she replied, "I wish to be among humans, to love the man who saved my life. I want a soul, a spark of life that endures beyond the foam of the sea." The sea witch's smile was both cruel and enchanting as she explained the terrible bargain, a potion that would grant the little mermaid human legs in exchange for her most enchanting gift, her voice, the very instrument of her song. "Once you become human," the witch whispered, her tone both ominous and seductively persuasive, "there will be no turning back to your old life. The moment the potion courses through you, you will feel as though a sharp sword were driving through your body, replacing the fluid grace of your tail with clumsy, bleeding legs. And remember, you may have a soul only if you win the love of the prince and wed him. Should he choose another at the first light of dawn after his marriage, your heart will break and you shall vanish into the foam of the sea." In that fateful moment, with tears glistening in her eyes like dewdrops on a fragile petal, the little mermaid swallowed the bitter truth along with the potion. She knew the cost was immeasurable, yet the promise of love and an immortal soul was too compelling to ignore. With a shaking resolve, she accepted the dreaded terms, and the sea witch's incantations filled the darkened water with ancient power. The potion, cool and unyielding as it passed through her trembling form, delivered a pain like no other, a searing fire that made her gasp as if cleaved by an unseen blade. As darkness closed in around her, she sank to the ocean floor, her world reeling as transformation took hold. When the morning light slowly broke over the horizon, its golden tendrils drifting through the water like gentle whispers, the little mermaid awoke on a soft stretch of shore. She lay naked upon the sand, her body transformed into that of a human, a fragile, trembling vessel that bore the scars of her terrible sacrifice. Disoriented and mute, she staggered towards the distant outline of a grand castle that soared upon a high cliff, its turrets and flags stirring in the breeze. It was there, in the realm of mortals, that a new chapter of her life would begin, a chapter fraught with pain, beauty, and the wild uncertainty of unspoken love. At the castle, the prince had not forgotten the night fate had bound his life to the mysterious savior. He discovered the strange mute woman washed ashore and was instantly captured by both her ethereal beauty and her graceful movements, even though she could not speak a single word. Her eyes shone with a depth of emotion that transcended language, and every time she danced, each step a silent prayer born of agony and hope, the prince found himself entranced beyond reason. His heart, long sheltered by duty and royal tradition, began to stir at the sight of her delicate, pained grace on the cold stones of the castle's courtyard. "There is something in the way you move," he confided one evening, his voice tender as he gazed at her with honesty that bordered on sorrow. "Something that speaks volumes, even when words fail." Though she could not answer him with her voice, the little mermaid's eyes conveyed the totality of her longing, a wordless confession of all that lay hidden within. Day by day, the mute enchantress became his closest companion. The prince would lead her through the splendor of the castle gardens, show her the vibrant markets of the town, and confide in her the dreams and burdens that weighed upon his royal heart. In twilight hours, they would sit in quiet conversation, her gentle, fluid movements speaking of a love that was as deep and mysterious as the sea itself. Yet, despite the bond that had grown between them, the prince remained oblivious to the fullness of her sacrifice. For in his heart, he could find no spark that told him he loved her in a manner that could mend the yearning void within him. Instead, he found himself continually returning his affections to a distant memory, a faint, uncertain vision of a young woman from the temple who had once cared for him during his darkest hours. The fragile equilibrium of their strange companionship was soon shattered by the weight of royal obligations. The prince's parents, ever mindful of the legacy of their family, introduced plans for an arranged marriage with a princess from a neighboring kingdom. In hushed corridors of the castle, he would lament, "I cannot ever love another the way I feel for you. Yet my heart is caught by a longing for the one who rescued me, for the kind-eyed maiden of the temple." In truth, the young woman from the temple was none other than the princess destined to marry him, a daughter of the temple sent for her careful education, whose gentle compassion had secretly kindled his heart. The realization struck the little mermaid like a wave of despair, as the prince declared his love for the maiden, and preparations for the royal wedding were swiftly announced. Even as the castle buzzed with the anticipation of the wedding celebrations, the little mermaid's heart sank into an abyss of unbearable sorrow. News of the impending nuptials spread beneath the palace walls of the sea as well, reaching the attentive ears of her elder sisters. Though they had long forsaken the allure of the surface, an undercurrent of envy and pity surged within them at the sight of their little sister's unyielding love suffering at the hands of fate. In a moment of bitter solidarity, they resolved to help her in a final, desperate bid to reclaim her former self. Venturing from the familiar warmth of their watery haven into the cool, treacherous shadows of the deep, they sought out the legendary dagger that the sea witch had given them in return for their own resplendent hair. The witch's bargain had always been desperate, and now it was entrusted to the mermaid sisters with the hope that it might temper the cruelty of destiny. "Take this," they whispered in unison, their voices trembling with conflicted emotion. "And if by some miracle you find the strength, use it to reclaim the life we know you deserve." Clutched tightly in her trembling hand, the glistening dagger shimmered with a promise of escape, a promise of transformation back into a mermaid, of relief from the ceaseless pain that had become her every step on this alien land. As the wedding day dawned over the vast expanse of the sea and land alike, the prince's grand ship set sail for the celebration. Adorned with the regalia befitting a royal nuptial and filled with the harmonious strains of hopeful melodies, the ship became a floating palace of joy. Yet, in the midst of the jubilant throng, the little mermaid's heart beat a sorrowful cadence, a dirge for a love that could never be. Hidden among the crowds on board, she dreamed of a miracle that would sever the chains binding her to a fate of mortal suffering. In the silent recesses of her soul, she clutched the dagger as both hope and despair warred within her. But as the celebrations reached their fevered pitch, with laughter echoing off canvas and dancing lights shimmering like scattered pearls, she realized with a piercing clarity that she could never bear to stain the prince's precious life with blood. That night, as the moon sailed high above the silvered waters and the jubilant strains of the wedding gave way to hushed, expectant whispers. The little mermaid crept aboard the ship where the prince slept soundly beside his new bride. The gentle glow of dawn had not yet crept over the horizon, and the air was thick with an almost sacred stillness. With trembling hands and a soul weighed down by both love and despair, she drew the dagger close. The cold metal reflected not only her tear-streaked face, but also the echo of every hope, every sacrifice that had led her to this impossible moment. Yet, as she raised the dagger to her heart in a desperate bid to reverse the cruel twist of fate, the quiet purity of the sleeping prince, vulnerable and untouched by malice, stopped her. In that instance, her resolve shattered like fragile glass. Overcome by the weight of unrelenting sorrow and the conflicting pull of love and duty, the little mermaid could not bring herself to commit the unthinkable act. With a final, anguished cry that mingled both hope and resignation, she hurled the cursed dagger far from her grasp. In the silent moments that followed, as the first blush of dawn began to seep over the horizon, she stepped away from the only life she had ever known. With no further choice but to embrace the inevitable, she allowed herself to be carried by the gentle pull of the sea, her form melding with the frothy embrace of the rolling waves. In that poignant moment of surrender, when life and loss intertwined in an exquisite tapestry of sacrifice, the little mermaid's body began to dissolve into shimmering foam. Yet rather than disappearing into the oblivion from which her kind were doomed, a transformation of pure, luminous wonder took hold. Her sorrow and beauty ascended as a radiant spirit, a daughter of the air, whose ethereal glow gently illuminated the first morning light. As she rose higher into the atmosphere, accompanied by other celestial daughters who whispered of kindness and redemption, she was granted a chance to do good, to temper the injustice of her unfulfilled love with lasting acts of compassion. In that transcendent moment, as her luminous form melded with the gentle currents of wind and light, a promise was made. A promise that when her time on earth was complete, her soul, earned by all her selfless sacrifice, would be crowned with eternal glory in the heavens beyond. So ends the tale of a love so fierce it defied the boundaries of two worlds, of a heart that chose sacrifice over self, and of a spirit that, in reaching for love, transcended even the cruelest fate. Her story endures as a gentle reminder that even in the depths of sorrow and the sharpest of pains, hope and redemption may yet be found amidst the ever-changing tides of life. Sweet dreams. Good night.